started with our minestrone soup now. I've already put some oil, about 2 tablespoons of canola oil in the pot, and I'm just starting to heat it up a little bit. And once that's heated, then I'm going to add some celery, some onions, and some carrots, and just get those vegetables softened a little bit. So we'll put the celery in. Oh, you can hear that was heated up. Hear a nice little sizzle there. My onions and my carrots. Now we're going to let that cook and soften, 5 minutes or so. And then after that, we're going to add a little bit of garlic. I'm not going to put the garlic in now because it might burn if we let it cook that long. So we'll let that cook for a little bit. This combination provides the base of flavor for the soup, the carrots, celery, onions. Other cultures, they'll use some other combinations, maybe celery, onion, garlic. But it just gives a nice flavor base to the soup. And you can use what you have. Peppers are often used, bell peppers cut up can be put in at this point as well. Later I'm going to be adding some kale to it, and so I'm going to get that chopped right now. So this is a variety of kale, a little bit different maybe than you're used to seeing. This is called lacinato kale or dinosaur kale. You can see why it might be called dinosaur kale because it's got that bumpy skin like a dinosaur might have had. But it's got all those good flavor benefits and health benefits that kale has. Loaded with minerals, loaded with vitamins, loaded with fiber. So I'm just going to cut out that thick stem there. And also make sure that I get that cut at the top. I'm going to stack those up. The dinosaur kale can be a little bit more tender than the other kale, so it's a nice addition to the soup. The other one is a good addition too if you want to add it. So give these a stir. You can start to smell them. They're smelling good. And put just a little bit more. And back to my kale. Take this last thick stem out. Put that chopped there. And then to chop them, just going to stack them up, and that'll make it easy to just get them into smaller pieces. Now if you didn't have a fresh kale, you could use frozen kale, or you don't have to put kale in at all. But it's just another nice way to add some green leafy vegetables into your diet. If you like spinach, you could put spinach in, fresh or frozen spinach, or Swiss chard, whatever suits you. So that's what's going to go in a little bit later at the end of our soup. Okay, our carrots and onions and celery are getting a little bit soft, very aromatic. I'm just going to add the garlic. This is chopped garlic, minced garlic. Just let that cook for a very little bit of time, not even a minute. But once you put that in there, you can really start to smell it and know that that's going to give another great flavor to the soup. So the next thing I'm going to be adding are our liquids. I'm going to put in some broth. I'm using a lower sodium chicken broth, but you could use a vegetable broth if you prefer. This is about 4 cups, so it would be the same as 2 smaller, 2 the cans, the smaller size cans, if you'd like to do that. If you only had 1 can, you could use 1 can of chicken broth and then put 1 can of water in. That's fine. You don't always have to do exactly what the recipe says. So we have that, and then I'm going to add a can of tomatoes. These are diced tomatoes. Again, I tried to use a lower sodium one. This actually has no salt added. And for this, I'm going to put the juice in. I don't always use all the juices in canned products, but for this, I am going to put the juice in because that's going to give it a little bit more flavor. I'm going to turn this up because I want to bring this to a boil. I'm going to add my seasonings, a little bit of Italian seasoning, which is a blend of different seasonings, basil, marjoram, oregano. That's going to go in. And then I'm going to add some thyme, some dried thyme as well. If you don't have that, don't worry about it. And then just stir that up. I'm going to bring that to a boil. I'm going to put the lid on just to help bring it to a boil a little bit quicker. And the reason I want to bring it to a boil first is because then I'm going to add my last group of ingredients, and to that I'm going to be adding a little bit of pasta. So I want to have the water at a high enough temperature to cook that, make sure I cook that pasta. Once I bring it to a boil, I'm going to reduce it a little bit though, so it's not boiling. Boiling is when you have a lot of bubbles in there, but simmer is a little bit, is not quite as forceful as the boil, less bubbles, and that's what I'm going to be cooking the soup on afterwards. So I'm going to be adding the pasta, our greens, and some beans once this comes to a boil. So I'm going to keep my eye on that to see when it comes to a boil. But while we're doing that, while that's coming to a boil, I just want to mention and talk about fiber a little bit. So what is fiber? We hear about it. Fiber comes from plant foods. You'll not find fiber from animal foods like meat, but fiber comes from plant foods, and it's the part of the plant that our body can't digest. And you'll hear about two kinds of fiber: soluble, which means it can absorb water, and insoluble, which means that it doesn't absorb water. So where can we find fiber and to include it in our diet? I'm going to step over here and show you some examples of foods that have fiber in them. They all come from plants. So let's see, we'll start with fruit. Fruits are a great source of fiber. Vegetables, carrots, potatoes, greens, all the vegetables. Dried beans or peas, good source. Beans, another great source of fiber. Nuts and grains. So for example, your cereal might have fiber in it. Your bread might have fiber. With grains, you're going to always find more fiber with whole grains. You have more fiber than the refined grains. But why is fiber important for us? Probably the best known reason that we should eat fiber that you're most familiar with is that it really helps our digestive system keep working smoothly. But aside from that, it also has a lot of other health benefits. It can help reduce your risk of diabetes, it can help reduce your risk of heart disease, it can help reduce your risk for some cancers, and it also can help lower your cholesterol. So overall, it's just a great thing to try to include in your diet every day. And if you're eating a good variety of plant foods, you're going to be getting fiber in your diet. Let's check on this soup. Oh my goodness, that came to a boil very quickly. It is boiling. Can you see those bubbles? So I'm going to add our pasta, and I am using a whole grain pasta. I'm adding our beans. This is a can of dark kidney beans that I've rinsed and drained. We'll give that just a stir to get that pasta mixed in. And then I'm going to add our chopped kale. The recipe calls for the kale, but as I mentioned before, if you don't want to include the greens, that's fine. But you can also include other vegetables. Again, you don't have to do exactly what the recipe says. If you had some zucchini, that would be a great addition. If you had some canned green beans, rinse them and put them in. So again, soup is a great vehicle to use things that you have in your refrigerator. So that's really all the ingredients that we're going to have in our soup. So I'm going to turn it down just a little bit, as I mentioned, and let it bubble gently, cook gently. It's going to cook just for about 10 minutes or so, just enough to get the pasta cooked, and then we'll be done. What a great, quick, healthy, and hearty soup. While it's cooking, let's think about the ingredients that we have in it and how many of them have fiber in them. So we started with our celery, carrots, and onions, all vegetables, all have fiber. We added tomatoes. Again, there's going to be some fiber in the tomatoes. It's a vegetable. We added beans. Beans are a very high source of fiber, and one way you can always tell if there's the amount of fiber in what you're using is, of course, to use the food label. You're going to find fiber listed under carbohydrates, and it will break down and tell you how much of the carbohydrate is fiber. In the can of kidney beans, half a cup has 7 grams of fiber. That's 25%, a quarter of the recommended daily amount. The general recommendation is to get about 25 to 30 grams of fiber a day. So I'm just watching this. Besides the pasta being cooked, I also want to watch that the greens wilt a little and that they get cooked too. So the other thing we just put in is our whole wheat pasta. Again, we're going to get some fiber from that. So we're going to have a delicious soup when we're finished. What are some other ways you could add fiber to your diet? Start with breakfast. Look at the cereal that you're eating. Again, check your nutrition facts. A whole grain cereal is going to give you a good start on your day with fiber. If you add some fruit to it, you're going to get even more. If you have a piece of whole fruit, you're going to get more fiber than having or drinking a glass of juice. If you're going to have a snack, munch on some vegetables, carrots or celery. You're going to get a lot more fiber in that than in a bag of chips. Add greens whenever you can. If you're having a sandwich, put some greens on it. If you're having soup, add some greens to the soup. Just do your best and think about what you're eating through the day, and maybe making some little changes really does add up to make a big difference, right? Okay, our soup is looking like it's done. The pasta's getting tender, and the greens are wilting a little bit. So we're going to get it ready, scoop it up. One shortcut you can take if you like with the pasta, if you'd prefer to cook the pasta ahead, you can do that, or if you're using leftover pasta, then when you put it in with the greens and with the beans, you're really just heating it, and that wouldn't take very long. But if you wanted to cook the pasta ahead while you're sauteing or cooking those carrots, onions, and celery, you could just boil the pasta separately and then add it to the end. Some people like to add their pasta separately anyway, because what happens with pasta is when it sits in the soup, it can just keep growing and absorbing a lot of the liquid. So some people actually prefer to add their pasta separately as they use the soup. So those are all choices you can make to suit yourself and what you like. Now, first I'll give it a little taste. It's going to be hot. It's really good. I thought I might need to add a little seasoning to it, but for this I really don't think I do. If you're at home and would like to, you can always add a little bit of pepper to season it, or just a pinch of salt if you think it needs a little bit of salt. That's totally up to you. So I'll turn it off, reach in with my ladle, and scoop it into our bowl. There we have a wonderful, delicious hearty, fiber-rich bowl of minestrone soup to enjoy at home on a nice cold day. Happy soup making, and I look forward to seeing you next month when we'll be talking about cooking for heart health.